You're good to go.
Okay, we'll go ahead and start the meeting. That's my favorite part. Carlos, want to do the
Sure.
roll call for us?
Commissioner Talbot,
Here.
Commissioner Jacobs,
Here.
Commissioner Moons,
Here.
and Commissioner Pattershot.
Here.
And I'll let the minutes reflect that Commissioner Zelinski had a scheduling conflict and is not in attendance. And then also Senior Planner Don Doty and myself, the Planning and Zoning Director Carlos Trejo, are in attendance. All right.
Fantastic. Open it up for public comments to see if there's anybody online, because we don't have anybody in the audience tonight.
We do have one attendee, that's Councilperson Waldman, and if there's anything that you'd like to speak of, again, just kind of show your hands located at the lower center portion of your Zoom screen. All right, Chairman, I see none.
Really nothing.
She is an attendee. She's not an active participant. If she wants to speak during the public session, she can raise her hand, then we can bring her over. But during the meeting itself.
Yeah,
unless-
okay, thank you.
Mhm. Good question, though.
Okay, well, moving right along. Carlos, you have something on the business communications plan?
Correct. At our last meeting, we distributed the business communications plan. You have a copy of it. There was a link on the agenda. Just wanted to talk about it. Prior to the pandemic, that was one of the areas that we stopped. And there, Mr. Moons, you can access it via that link, and I can forward you a paper copy if need be. But the commission did talk about doing a business outreach and getting a couple of members to visit a handful of businesses and gauge type of questions that would be asked. The first round would have been very simple is, I think we talked about the kind of what's posted in here is how is your business doing? What is it that the city can do in there, and just kind of go, again, just really a meet and greet just to get engagement with the community. Kiana Fleming, who's our communications manager, put this together. And again, in an effort to give us some guidance to better communicate with our businesses. And again, the three core questions are on page 3. What does Olivet want from businesses? How can we help them? How can we provide more information? And why did they choose Olivet? I think those were the core questions. The commission kind of talked about them and did kind of reword a little bit, but stayed within those 3 on there. So that's where we're trying to pick up now post pandemic to see if if we're comfortable to engage to still do a handful of businesses and then kind of work out a schedule.
Is this something, I'm sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
is
Yeah.
this something that, when you say make out a schedule, handful of businesses, is this something we're doing or staff? is
Correct. The
doing?
commission members were going to reach out
Okay,
in there, and some of the rationale why was it that sometimes, in some cases, like a staff member or a building inspector or something would kind of be intimidating
right.
to be fake.
I get that.
Right away.
Mhm.
So,
Sounds good. Anybody have any ideas on that before we? Oh, would we do this? Imagine, Ms. Doty, you would have a list of businesses.
I don't have one prepared other than our business licenses.
yeah, that would be, yeah. And then if we would kind of select a variety in there, kind of reflective of the different industrial parks, different business types, and then just those that would be easy to access. So smaller boutique or small business type, as opposed to having you run into enterprise and say hi.
Hey, how are ya?
Right, yeah, appointments are pretty much mandatory, especially with coming out of the situation for the last couple of years.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah,
Um, So perhaps we can just get that list and maybe we can, if you can disseminate that to the members, we can go ahead and maybe pick a few people
Mhm.
and maybe get this started in the next couple of months.
Yeah. And that's a good point. We can reach out to them prior, saying, that the member of the EDC would like to meet with you, if they would be comfortable, on a date that they drop by or something.
Sure, and I remember Jonathan, who was here before, he actually put some things together with NAICS codes, as well as, I think, size and location. There's kind of a database together. So maybe we can have like all that data so that, we can kind of pick and choose things. I'm kind of thinking maybe we do some of the established businesses first.
Mhm.
Or we can choose by size or whatever, but let's get the list out, see what people think.
Our list is 200, or the full list of 2021 licenses, it's 289. companies. Some duplication. There, I was wondering actually if there are any companies that you currently know that would already be like a soft entry that are located here that and would be a good introduction.
I would say the only caveat before we get into that is for the 289 businesses, does that include home-based businesses?
Exactly.
I would say that we probably don't want to necessarily bother someone by knocking on their door saying, we're from the government and we're
Here to help you, yeah.
It's like the fake IRS calls.
Yeah, right.
Um,
We definitely remove those home-based businesses.
Just flag them or remove them. So just
Yeah.
indicate that they are home-based businesses.
quick question. Was there previously like a stakeholder meeting with any of these companies, or that's obviously probably what we're trying to get to, correct?
We've tried in the past to have to invite them and bring them in, and it's a hit or miss.
Sure.
We did even some extensive ones posted by other businesses. And, we'd end up with a very small handful of participants. So in this go around and with the business communication plan, it was more being proactive and going
Sure.
out as opposed to, coming
I was
in.
just hoping there was something to derive maybe some pain points from, meaning talking points to the new businesses. But the good news is that if you've had that experience and a few people showed up, that means there wasn't a lot of angry people. I mean, honestly.
No, and for the most part, and given the size of the community and even the amount of businesses, I mean, it is pretty personal. I mean, I honestly don't think that you'll hear like a bad inspection or planning review comment in most part. I think you'll hear about probably road access, signage, identity and signage. And, for the most part, I don't think even taxes would be high on their list of, and if it is, it's probably all the other jurisdictions that are woven in.
Yeah.
Commercial real estate.
Sounds good. Well, get
Okay.
that out to us, and then maybe by the next meeting, we can go ahead and have everybody come back with a few ideas on how we can execute this. And of course, we'll need some volunteers. And perhaps maybe we can interface with Kiara.
Kiana?
And she's put something pretty good together here, but maybe a few talking points, because there's so many things happening with the new development and things around our periphery, things happening in U City as well as Creve Coeur.
And how those impact us?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be probably some questions with regards to that. So we want to be able to discuss this somewhat intelligently. So have her make us look good. Mr. Moons, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I don't think we need to wait a couple of months. I'm sure we can just pick off couple of businesses apiece and come in and just talk to them. I mean, these first three questions are so safe that hopefully, I think to one of the comments earlier, it leads to a follow-up discussion where we get some more meaty feedback from the business community, because that was the initial, I think, the impetus for this dialogue pre-pandemic was, are we doing a good job? We have very low vacancy rates. We have really seemingly satisfied businesses, but are we really doing a good job, or is there something we're missing? So, I mean, if you just look at the Olive Corridor, there's, probably 40 or 50 businesses. We might be able to pick a few off a piece and get it done in the next month, just to have, 15-minute conversation to get a sense and for what these folks are thinking.
That's good.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, well, maybe if you know of some people that kind of like what Carlos said, or someone said, if they know of any businesses right now they'd like to kind of hit on, maybe we can get that list together quickly.
Is the idea for what you're just asking to hit businesses that we know are happy?
No.
Or,
Or that we
I
know
like,
about, yeah.
I mean,
No.
look,
Yeah.
I use Greg as an
What-
example. We all know Greg. I could walk into Greg's office and say, how do you like living here in Olivet? I mean, that's an easy one, right?
What we can do, because we have the licensing listed in different zones.
Mhm.
We really got 3 major industrial parks, and then the Olive Boulevard corridor. We kind of break it up with the east, the central, and the west.
Okay.
So within each of those zones, we can provide you the list of businesses that are in there, and then kind of narrow it down. You're more than welcome to go to US Bank or Enterprise, but I think, we can weed some of these out and then leave you guys at least a dozen within each of these zones to kind of look at and discuss, prior to the next meeting. And then we'll have Kiana at the next meeting, narrow down those questions. And then this is probably something that could be done, depending on schedules in April. So in our next March meeting, you would have the list broken down in advance. And then we'll have Kiana that night talk about, the question to make sure everybody's comfortable with
What
3
we're actually
questions.
going out to ask
Mhm.
them.
And then you guys can decide who and when.
I think that's kind of.
Is that
a
all
good-
right?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good time to kind of get the planning of this done now.
Mhm.
And we can get on this as soon as we can. But like as of today, the mask mandates have just been lifted. And things are really going to start to be opening up. And I think people are going to like to see people come out to the businesses.
We definitely think so, and I'm really interested to get your perspective on what businesses could come to. What things have you noticed, about their presence and all of that may or may not make them a good candidate for outreach. Not necessarily, the size of their business or whatever it is, but, what have you noticed in your everyday life that would make them good tenants? I mean, we all drive up and down Oliver, and we don't all drive up and down Gilman Industrial.
Right.
Right.
So,
Right.
that may be something to take a look at yourself, but we will certainly be, we're trying to have a boots on the ground.
Sure.
Overusing that one.
It's probably the best descriptive. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a couple of things to do. So getting some lists together, picking some businesses to visit and look at. And we'll see if we can maybe do that before the next meeting somewhat.
Yeah, and the next meeting would be March 28th. And David, if that's reasonable enough in time frame, I hate to try to schedule another meeting in between. We can do so if we want to move faster, but I think, like you said, give 30 days for the mandate to kind of
Settle in.
Yeah.
settle.
Be
Is
embraced.
that all right?
If you're asking my opinion, yeah, I think that's just fine. I will hit the liquor store and the sports card shop though prior to that, just to test the water.
Those are
So-
yours.
Yep. Okay. I'll do that tomorrow actually then, just to get it out of the way early.
Happy to go to Fallon's for you.
Okay.
Right.
At night.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And going Wednesday, send me a list.
Sounds after dark. It was just there.
Okay.
At a working lunch.
Well, that's good. Moving right along, 5-year economic development plan.
Just to kind of overview, there's not much to discuss in this. Now, this plan, of course, is coming to its 5th year, and it's something that we'll probably engage in. But I prefer that we kind of hold off to see, the city's planning commission is going to begin the process of updating its comprehensive plan. And doing so, we'll be using some outside consultants, and it's a pretty big cost item that we'll be endeavoring and we're going through. So it'd be good to try to integrate some of the professional services that we get with updating of this plan, or making sure that this plan is in sync with whatever the recommendations of that comprehensive plan are. So there may be about a year overlap, but I think you guys did a pretty good drafting of the plan in terms that I don't anticipate our goals are going to change much. And the goals being, to expand business and industry and all of that, position all of that for economic growth and invest in the future of all of that. I'll go over each of these 3 and what we've done so far, but they're pretty broad objectives that I think will stay in line, and it will be the minutia that's probably going to change before those goals.
All right. Questions, comments, concerns? If you had a chance to familiarize yourself with it, just, a little light reading in case you have
Yeah.
insomnia.
Mhm.
But no, we actually put it together our last few years. 5-year plans are exactly what they are.
Right.
And it's nice to know that some of the stuff has actually come into fruition. So,
I think
yeah.
it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Will I find this on the website or
Yep.
or
Mhm.
will you email it to me? I should go look for it on the website.
I can do
Got
both.
it. Nope, got it. No need to be spoon fed.
It's color coded. I can
That's
see
so
from here.
cute.
Yeah.
I love that.
And it's,
I wish I were like that.
it's kind of high level. You drill down
Don't
that
worry, I'll
as
read
we
it and
do
then I'll
yeah.
call you.
Okay, no, I'll expect your call. Okay.
Weird.
All right. All right. Other business.
Wait,
Well,
Oh,
wait,
yeah,
wait, wait,
Jimmy.
wait, wait. I'm sorry, newbie. I'm taking a point of privilege as the newest person.
Go right
You-
ahead.
Did we join the same, were you
We
already here or
did.
are we doing the same day?
I was just
Okay.
gonna let you have it though.
I'm so confused. I'm really so confused.
No, it's
You
okay.
guys remember,
Yeah.
my first meeting, I was on vacation.
Yeah, that's why I was gonna
You
let you
know,
have
and I just got back from vacations, but I'm
it.
done
With the broken
vacationing.
toe.
I'm done.
Go on.
Our purpose, our job for the economic development plan is to develop the next one? Or is that done by the planning commission?
no, that's done through this commission.
Okay, so I'm gonna read this,
Mhm.
the one that's 5 years coming to the end of.
Yes,
And then we are gonna go on with the next 5 years? So am I reading this
Correct.
conversation correctly? Okay, thank you.
the thing is that there may be a gap, because we are in our 5th year of this plan.
Right. So there
But
might be
there-
some
there may
time
be a
between the end
gap
of
or
that
some
one and the
overlay.
beginning. Okay.
And ultimately, what you'll find within this plan, it was really reinforcing and implementing a lot of the comprehensive
Right.
plan objectives.
Right, got it.
In there, and that's what your role kind of reads.
Okay.
And
And actually, a lot of things that we set out to do, like some of the database acquisition,
Mhm.
we've actually put that in place. And just some of the development that we've kind of looked at. We've had the ability to focus on some of those things, and those things have really started to come to fruition. So it's kind of like, it's not really rewriting the thing, it's sort of dusting it off and just revamping it.
Making sure it's still
that's-
relevant.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
And
got
just
it.
sort of something that we, and actually, I found that in doing it, it's the act of doing it which really gets your mind on these meetings and, talking about the right things that need to be talked about.
Sure.
I just one quick comment about this document. I think the last 4 years that I've been here, I think it's been 4 years, we were in a space where we're moving from having vacant lots and dilapidated buildings into making sure that we we're seeing progress and development. And I'm really keen to see the next 5 to 10-year plan where we start to see more of the development that we all get excited about. And I think there's a difference there. And I think that this commission has the ear of council to give guidance, to steer projects that address what the residents are looking for, as well as what's best from an economic standpoint. And I think now we have more freedom to do that, since there's no more vacant lots, right? So now it's becomes a bit more technical and maybe strategic in some of our decisions. So that sounded like a lot of corporate business jargon, but really when it's about being excited about taking the next step for the community and servicing the community with the amenities that the community wants and is looking forward to.
That's a great point. Actually, it's a opportunity maybe to incorporate something in the plan to say how far we've come. And, we can take that to council to make sure that they're doing the kinds of things that would benefit the residents from the economic development that has happened. Good point. We have some meeting minutes. We actually
You have meeting minutes that were distributed from the January 31st, 2022 meeting. In there. Now, again, the purpose of the meeting minutes is to acknowledge receipt and then provide any corrections. So Commissioner Jacobs, so even if you weren't in attendance, you can,
I was. This is when we did by
Oh,
Zoom.
that was
I
it.
was there.
Okay,
Everybody was there.
then everybody was set.
I was there.
So to have a look at them quickly. Have someone make a motion to accept these.
Okay, I move to accept the minutes from the Economic Development Commission meeting on January 31st of 2022.
I second that motion.
Mr. Moons, Ms. Jacobs. Can you call the roll?
Yes, sir.
Mr.
Commissioner Talbot,
Yay.
Commissioner Jacobs,
Yay.
Commissioner Moons,
Yep.
Commissioner Patterson.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously 4-0.
Mr. Carl, council or city staff reports first. We'll go ahead so that some of the wind can be blown out of Mr. Carl's sails as usual.
I love that. I don't need to say anything.
Staff
Are we set?
reports.
Okay, I'll start on Old Bonham Road first. As the school improvements are going on right now, that's moving pretty smoothly. They're almost completed with the exterior shell. And once they get into that, that should be moving pretty good. And I think their intent is to open up before the school session. We don't know of any major issues that they've hit in there, and it's been, we've been working well with them. Further down to the east is a new residential subdivision, Birdie Lane, that is going in. It's a 8-lot single-family subdivision, and we already have 4 of those lots. 2 have gone through the commission review. 1 actually has a permit, and I have 2 more coming in for this month for commission review. So that's moving pretty smoothly. As you get to the Olive Boulevard corridor, off on the western side, so by Warson Road, the community center, they should be getting to the footings on that. That'll be exciting in there, but pretty well the footprint is in place and it's been moving with the weather holding up now. Things should be going pretty well. Don has been working with the Miriam Academy along with representatives of 39 North and the YWCA, whose administrative offices are located here and all of that. On coordinating some reuse of, Miriam has more space than what they need. And they're trying to coordinate between to open, is it a early education center on that campus with support of 39 North, because they're looking for their employees to have a nearby space for their children. So
Got it.
So it's kind of like a multi-player thing that's Don's kind of been working on.
That's cool.
we are trying to gauge the community. Right, we're trying to gauge the community through a survey with the YWCA, basically asking what kind of services are needed and what age group. So it's not entirely defined. They've thought about making it a part Head Start facility, but they don't know that they have enough Head Start families in the area. So that's a huge part of the survey. It's not to decide if that location is a good location for a daycare, because it very clearly is. It's more so to gauge like what services need to be offered
At
most
the.
at there,
Right.
yeah.
And we're just making sure I'm thinking in the right, this is what was Epstein is now Miriam, right?
Mhm.
Right.
Okay.
And so the longer building along the back that you don't really see from the
Right.
road, that's all occupied by the Miriam Academy, and they have special needs students there.
Now, where's the YWCA's offices?
They're in the Olivet Executive Parkway, right between the Mobile and Taco Bell. That's-
Oh, right. Right. Or Prevent Ed is and all that.
Mhm. And again, that goes back, we use that, the engagement process that Don's been kind of following goes back to the 5-year plan about, identifying desirable business and industry types, reaching out and communicating with businesses and being more proactive as opposed to, waiting for it to happen. We're actually trying to push it, make it happen, actually.
Right.
As you come in, of course, back to Warson and Olive, our neighbor to the west. I think you had the flyer about the Monsanto East Campus going up for sale, or the Bear East Campus, I guess.
Yeah, just found this out recently that, of course, the entire Bear campus is split by Lindbergh Boulevard, and the western half of that is now up for sale.
Oh, shut up.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So
That's pretty cool,
it's,
right?
well, it's
Mhm.
actually, it's gonna,
It is.
really, it happened
It's
fairly,
the fault.
not very long ago, but, after probably right after the first of the year, they've hired someone to put it on the market already, and this is actually a brochure from the realtor, commercial realtor that's doing it. They're actually, it looks as though they're actually trying to sell it as an office complex right now. And actually, my thoughts are that because it's so close to 39 North, and 39 North has some fairly aggressive yet long-term ideas that may fit with what they're trying to do.
It is in 39.
Well, you're right, and it's gonna open up the space for more companies rather than building, because I know Beacon Hill, they came in and they built. As well as, Danforth Center has added on in recent years too, so we'll see what happens, but if it doesn't, there's some speculation that it could become potentially higher density residential.
Where?
The,
In this?
yeah, in this, tear it down, because the buildings are old, 1957, 63,
Yeah, yeah,
something
yeah.
like that, yeah. Or 63 and 72, something like that. And interesting to see how that's gonna shake out. It all depends on who buys it.
We'll be, keeping tabs on that. And there was an article in the Business Journal earlier this week that kicked that off. In there, and then we had heard from the Creve Coeur at a chamber luncheon that they had noted that the campus was that the information would be coming out on the campus.
It'd be interesting to see what the city of Creve Coeur thinks about changing the zoning there.
Yeah, that would be Parkway Schools though, right?
Nope. it's Ladue.
It's Ladue.
It's Ladue.
Oh, that'd be Ladue. Oh, interesting.
The other things are the improvements going on Lindbergh. They're at Olive and Lindbergh. That should be coming or wrapping up pretty soon.
Did Bear finance that?
No, that was actually a project, and I think it was primarily county had a big role in that. And I'm thinking that they may have done the, it was through a grant, but I think they did the.
But it was done because the county or Creve Coeur wanted it, not because Bear wanted it.
It was, no, had nothing to do specifically with Bear, but it's part of the 39 North Master Plan.
Got it. The 39 North, we're talking about the North 39.
We're talking, it includes the Bear campuses all the way up to Bauer on the north side, so by the railroad tracks.
The 39 is this 39th parallel.
Oh, got it. I
Which
wasn't
is-
sure what the
yeah,
39
Yeah,
was.
that's what it is. Yeah, so
Right.
it's just that the 39th parallel, when you consider it around the world, it's a very prodigious, I can't say it, important growing area around the world.
Yeah.
And actually, I think it goes to Ukraine.
Why is this the thing?
Here,
It's
Yeah.
biotechnology.
Got it.
Yes.
they did a really interesting presentation, and it was just one of those flukes that I just happened to be at because of real
It's like,
estate.
how'd you get so smart? Where did you
No,
get so good?
so just pre-pandemic, they did a big presentation at Danforth about that with Urban Affairs Committee with St. Louis, in conjunction with St. Louis Association of Realtors. So they did a presentation to basically get commercial brokers excited about what they were doing so that we would all clamor over trying to get listings around. But I mean, it was, in fact, I'll dig and try to, I'm sitting here thinking, gosh, I'm already failing because I could have probably dispersed that out to everybody because it was pretty specific and informational of what they put together. It was fascinating.
Yeah, there's, like years ago, I want to say, about 4 years ago, they came out with the plan.
Mhm.
And there's a fairly large comprehensive document which talks about the kinds of businesses they want to do. And it actually talks about the realignment of Lindbergh Boulevard, and some of that infrastructure was the first step.
Got it.
And, it also incorporates parkland, walking trails,
Mhm.
and they're trying to incorporate the kinds of things that young professionals would want to have in their work environment.
Got it.
There is a big plan to, was to make that part of Monsanto's campus more accessible and really, I mean, I can't say that I, saw it coming or anything, but I know that, it was at least known to some degree that that wasn't a forever campus for Monsanto. I am wondering though about the chapter 100 on the property and how that would affect the sale. It's a tax abatement, real estate tax abatement
Oh.
the county did some years ago.
For Monsanto.
I wasn't aware that there was one there, but
That's what I was actually just.
Yeah. Your comment of making the campus more accessible is very
Accessible.
appropriate right now because it's really accessible because it's for sale.
Well, accessible
Accessible to
by
whom?
walking by,
So-
so from Olive, so people walking across from Danforth.
There's literally,
They
in the
could
plans,
put
there
a
was a
bridge.
pedestrian bridge. Yeah, because it's obviously so disconnected from everything else. And they even dubbed part of that presentation with Old Olive as, the road that goes nowhere. That was their
Ah,
joke.
It does go.
But
several
It goes
interesting places.
many places, but they were just trying to, obviously, their master plan was to connect all of those things together back then.
I mean, you guys keep talking about making it accessible to pedestrians, and the only thing I can think of my entire life is how inaccessible the property is.
Right.
Mhm.
Right, with all the gates and the
Sure.
guards and the,
Yeah. No,
the
that-
unaccessible.
It was a really big deal one day whenever some Monsanto employees walked across Olive to Danforth for a meeting and we could see them walking.
Wow, that's impressive.
One of the other projects that they are going to be doing is the split, the old Olive split on each side of Lindbergh.
Mhm.
This summer, they should start construction and they're going to make that into a signalized intersection.
On Lindbergh?
Correct. So you could take Old
Really?
Olive, off of Olive, go through that back area where the HBA is and the
Yeah.
hotel.
What?
That was the
Okay.
component of the road that goes nowhere.
Yes,
And
but
then-
the,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, but the, never mind, I'm gonna.
I hear
I'm
you.
gonna be this professional. So,
So Lou Fuse would be connected to Lou Fuse via, through a light. It'd be a
Right.
signalized intersection.
Hmm.
And originally,
don't love
I
that.
don't- like a couple of years ago, it's really, since I really had a good look at it, they wanted to make that into a quote unquote entertainment district, like something where you'd have, restaurants.
Just on that road to nowhere.
Right, so would it have actually be a destination? We'll bring sweet tomatoes back, you never know.
We could have picnics around the water tanks,
Right.
I do remember mention of a brewery.
right next to the water tank. The water would be excellent.
The breweries come up in our discussions.
Yeah,
a
yeah.
number of times. Yeah, yeah. They're popping up like mushrooms. Breweries, yes.
Right,
As well as, ice cream parlors. too.
Like I need more of that.
Heading eastward from Warson and Olive, as you get to Olivet Center, which is Party City and Tuesday Morning are located in. We have 3 new tenants that are relocating into the space. And I've been here since 2002, and this will be the first time that we'll have just one space left
Oh, wow. Who's
in
coming in?
there. So where the liquor store is at, and then there was a back piece. I'm not sure that was part of the old
It's the
donut.
donut store.
Correct.
Ray's.
There is a physical therapy that's going in there, and that's a tough space.
So
'cause
they
it's-
subdividing the 3,100 square feet. I was just happened to
Nope.
be there today. There's a sign on that space that says it's 3,100 square feet.
they're taking that whole portion out.
Hmm.
They're taking the whole tenant space
Okay.
in there, and that's a tough space because it's really tucked in,
Mhm.
and the visibility, if you're going westbound, is none.
Nothing.
In there. Then on the other side of Domino's, 2 spaces are going to be combined, and the East Seoul Grocery Mart, I believe, that
Oh,
was
China
located there
store?
in Jeffrey Plaza, is
Oh, in Jeffrey
relocating
Plaza.
there.
Right.
They're going to take 2 tenant spaces in there, and then Beijing Arts and Acupuncture is taking another space, and then that'll leave me with 1 tenant space that a vapor shop was looking at, but I don't think that they're gonna pursue it anymore.
That sounds good.
It's as close as we've gone to full occupancy in that space, and it's a really good shopping center. It's just outdated. The docks are really bad in the back and for deliveries, low ceiling, not, there's no fire suppression system in there, but
The city doesn't own that.
No.
do we? Okay. Same guys.
it's managed by Bianco Properties,
Right.
and I think they hold it to in some form of some way. So then as you continue east, we've been hammering Easy Storage to try to get a schedule of when construction will start, and it looks like it will be August would be the construction, kickoff date in there as they're wrapping up their financing and then getting their permits.
Construction meeting, site construction,
Mhm.
okay, site work, so probably not till well into the fall.
Site work's already in place because they got, they put the detention system all in there,
Oh, right.
and the site's pretty well graded. So I'm talking about actually
Actual,
building
good.
construction. That'll include it's a 4 levels, I believe, of indoor storage, and then about, it's 7,500 square feet of retail space in the bottom, but that includes their unit as part of that. So the total comes out to between 5,000 to 6,000 of tenant space.
Was part of their holdup, was it trying to acquire tenants for that space?
No, not that I'm
Okay.
aware of.
Okay, so nothing to report there with regards to if they have any tenants yet?
No. And we checked with them a couple of months ago, and at that point, they hadn't. And then I think the council took a position to be pretty clear what the expectations were for that space. And I'll let the Councilman Carl, if you want to add on anything to that.
Yeah, we have made a deal with them to find, so when they first came to the city, which was quite a while back, long before the pandemic and any of that, when we were working with them, we worked with them to get different materials that weren't currently on our list of approved materials, but that they wanted to use. So we did some zoning alteration there so that, and we agreed that it would make the building look better. It's supposed to look something like, a little bit like the Danforth Center. And at that time, they said, well, leasing the space is not our primary business. So we can be a little more choosy about the tenants we have. And so we ask for specific kinds of tenants, right? That would hopefully, bring amenities to the city. And so, go ahead. I'm sorry. Is there a question? No. Okay. So, we have an agreement in place with them now where it's supposed to be about half amenities. But we on the city side can lower that if they bring in a really great amenity, right? Or something like that. So, unlike a shopping center where that's their primary business and they have to get leased up like immediately, this is not the case here. So, we have hopes that they bring in someone exciting. So,
And
And
I
I'll
believe the conditions of the council approvals were, I think there was a number of 50% had to be more retail. As
Right.
opposed to personal
Right.
service oriented,
Right.
unless something spectacular was brought, then the council could assess that. So again, the council was looking more for retail generating type of businesses than a barber shop.
I would say, and this is just my feeling, is that a building of that size is gonna, especially when the incentives we gave them expire, gonna create a lot of property tax. Much so, more so than any normal thing we would have put there. But we would also, we're greedy. We'd like the retail sales tax too, so. That's basically it.
And as you get midway on the Olive Corridor, you have the Plant Haven, it's moving really well, and so is the Oliver. The Oliver, we know that they're looking for a May move-in date. That's been advertised pretty well.
Wow.
They haven't talked much about the retail component. There's going to be about a 3,500 to 5,000 square foot retail component where the old timekeepers used to sit. They were going to get the apartments moving, and that right now that space is pretty much the staging area for now. Across the street at Plant Haven, that's moving pretty smoothly. We're trying to set up a meeting with the owners who are also residents of all of that to get a better idea of tenants. At this point, they didn't have, a couple of months ago when we met with them, they really weren't sure yet. They've had some interest and inquiries, but they weren't set yet to pick anybody, which is kind of nice. They're in a position to be picky too. Getting to Dillman and Olive for the Firestone, they're looking for hopefully an April date, and their weather holds up. They are doing improvements back to where the Veterans Fountain used to be. That is being redesigned into a nice public space. And there's there will be something there at that corner. And there will also be space for Olivet and Bloom to continue doing their plantings in that corner. So they work well with us to engage in that. And then on Dealman across the street here from the city center, Douglas Properties, which is operated by Doug Cohen, is working on a 35-unit townhouse development. That is before the Planning and Community Design Commission right now. And actually they're meeting again on Thursday to continue their discussions and reviews. I think for their overall, we've noted this to the commission, what he's designed is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the vision of the city center in there, and it's consistent with the city center district. So there's no issues regarding about the development type. So now it's more about, the character, the architecture, the spaces, and that's where the commission's focus is right now.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
It may not be our business, so if you want me to not, and after I ask my question, if you want to not discuss it, that's fine.
Not to me.
I recently met a resident who lives behind CVS. Okay, and she expressed, I told her that I was doing this. I had just started, I had only been to one meeting or whatever. And she expressed to me at that conversation that the apartment building that's being built, she is very concerned about the amount of parking available to the tenants of that apartment building and where is the spillover parking going to go? That was the gist of the conversation. Good, bad, or indifferent, that was the gist. of it. Which gets me to, is the commission, is city council, um, considering that as you're doing the architectural development with
Yeah.
with Doug to make sure there's plenty.
In
of
that
parking for
development,
that
there was,
development.
there was discussion, and parking's always interesting, because you're asking for too much or you're asking for too little. As a planner,
Oh, I know.
I think parking should be set by the developer. And there, when I started, I think like the shopping center here at Olivet Center required 6 spaces per 1,000. We're now down to 3.3 per 1,000. And, you know, still find empty spaces throughout that space. It's getting better.
Right,
In there, and we did the same thing with offices. So for the townhouse development across the street, the code requires 2 parking stalls, 2 off-street parking stalls per unit.
that's what I was wondering.
He's providing 4.
Okay.
But there have been concerns saying, well, what about parties? You know, and what about
Well, I guess they'll
guests?
park over here.
Well, and that was one of the things, but
Right.
we can't, it's really not a public parking lot. It is a public space, but it, you know, they can't depend on our parking for there. Then there's nothing we can do to stop them either.
Right,
But the commission wanted parking within the development itself. And they did find, it looked like they found through the design an opportunity to provide, I think, 6 to 8 additional stalls that aren't tied to any of the units. So if
Mhm.
somebody was
so if
having
somebody had a
guests,
visitor,
Mhm.
whatever.
and I
got
think
it.
that's sufficient.
Yeah, that was my only question. I know it was too late to do anything about whatever's going on down by CVS, but I just thought I would ask the
And
question.
even with the CVS, again, there, we have a numerical requirement for how much parking they should have, which they've met, but then they've added more. And they're now, is it gonna be perfect? We'll find, you know,
We'll find
time
out.
will, you know, it's a
We'll
test of
find
time.
out.
But it's no different than what the Oliver is. And the goal here is, again, you know, the old planning parking requirements was you have to plan for the day after Thanksgiving. You have to have that much stuff. And then the 363 days of the year, it's just. sits
Right,
there.
I got it.
And actually, your comments are appropriate for your questions, because when we looked at it, these are the kinds of things we ask, because it changes, the amount of parking changes the investment a developer is going to make.
Right,
And that could change the makeup of the ask or not ask or whatever. So that's always, you know, anything could be monetized.
right,
Some things are not appropriate to be monetized, but
Right.
most everything is. So-
right. Okay,
And we'll continue back on Olive. The next development is of course up at Olive Crossing. The permit for the apartment building was issued today. So they'll start construction. It's 184 unit, 5-story parking with an attached garage. He also went before the planning commission last month for approval for a 10,000 square foot commercial retail building. That's going to be closest to the ramps. And it's pretty neat. They'll have 2 restaurant tenants, you know, capping the building, and at least 3 or 4 tenants within that space. He didn't identify who's interested in those spaces. It's a really neat building. I have the information online. You can get a chance to look at it. It may have a mezzanine level, and if not, it's got a really high ceiling space. And then it also has the public space design for that front portion.
So basically that building would sit between the ramps and the extension of Collingwood,
That is correct, or Hilltop.
Hilltop Collingwood, right? Yeah.
And then going back to the apartments behind CVS, demolition's ongoing right now. And I think there's 4 or 5 buildings they haven't touched in this because we're waiting for some paperwork information to come in. So they were already clearing some of the site in some areas, I was told today. In there. If you continue to our neighbors on the east, of course, there, you know, more signage came up in there. I haven't seen any redesign plans specifically what's going to happen to the Jeffrey Plaza. There is the old, you know, the initial Novus RFP submission that identified that he was going to have a couple of boxes, mid-sized boxes on that end. You know, of We haven't seen any activity on the south side. See what else would be going on.
Were the buildings where Buyer Lumber and
It's the
the
south side.
fish, I know, is that all sold too? Is that all
Well,
gonna be
we hear
redeveloped?
different things. We hear like some of them have not been approached yet or been told what's going on.
Novus had originally put the deal together on both sides with 50-some acres. And it was fairly comprehensive, but the deal was flipped over to
Clayco's.
Clayco.
Oh, right.
That's right. And we're sure exactly how that, when that transition happened,
Got it,
did everything go with it?
got it.
I'm anxious to find out myself.
And that's, if there's any questions on the development projects or anything going on, let me know. I do want to, Councilman Carl, just, as it transitions to you, to talk about the ARPA projects that are under council's consideration in there, and if you need any help, let me know.
The ARPA, do you mean the federal relief funds?
Mhm.
Okay, well, I don't have the list right in front of me, so if you've got that handy.
I do know a couple of them that were like kind of economic development. Things. So, of course, I think all of that will be getting $1.4 million in
Somewhere in that range, yes.
federal funds as part of the Relief Act in there, and the councils had discussions of what to use or utilize that money for, what type of projects would qualify for those federal funds, and then how we can leverage some of those funds with other funds to really make an impact in the community. So some of the things that have been discussed, and again, I go back to this 5-year plan because it talks about investment to encourage economic development. One of the projects is Price and Olive on the north side between CVS and the CBD or cannabis shop or whatever. it
Not
is.
cannabis, it's CBD.
CBD, that between that shop in there. And you might recall back in '98, there used to be a plan to have 3 lanes coming out of the industrial park, and then it ended up being just 2.
But you could turn from any direction from the one on the right.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So we would be going back to a similar design, but having a dedicated right turn lane. And that seems to be what causes a lot of that backup in that industrial
Right.
park. So that's consistent with, again, with the 5-year economic development plan, and then a couple of other studies and the comprehensive plan in there. So we've been looking at that really hard because we've heard from our residents, both in the Hilltop Arrowhead area and in the industrial parks, that it takes, you got to go
Forever.
3 or 4 cycles within an hour's period to get out of there. So that should improve it. In addition to that, there are improvements going on as part of the Yowitz project or the Olive Crossing project at Hilltop. So that should improve that aspect on it. And then between Honeywell, which is the old Aldi, Aldi, and the US Bank, we're looking to also add a right turn lane there.
There is one, oh no, sorry,
It's a single lane. So again, if you get behind somebody trying to turn left
right,
and you want to go right, you're going to
Correct.
be waiting a while,
Got
depending on the time. So those are 2 projects that the council is considering. Another one is trying to do a kind of a project on Olive, probably right by the city center. So either by the Oliver or closer to Gilman, kind of like an identity Great Streets project, put in a median, landscape median, or a really important pedestrian crossing in that area. As that other projects that were talked about was looking at possibility of a sidewalk connecting a portion of Indian Meadows to Olive Boulevard, especially where the apartment complexes are.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons there is right now, the school buses stop and there's really no place for the kids to go.
right,
And this was to get an opportunity to get kids off the street and in there. So it's not a sidewalk to go into Indian Meadows, it's just to connect Indian Meadows to Olive and without having to get in the road area between the apartments and the condos. So those were a couple of the infrastructure projects that were in discussion. in there. Other use of the funds would be, supplementing the comprehensive plan update. Some city software initiatives that we've been looking at for plan review, finance review, and then possibility of there was discussion about the EV stations or funding for the EV stations and paying for some wayfinding signage.
For those,
Looking
for
at
the EVs, for the EVs.
no, the city did a wayfinding plan probably like in 2016 in there where, it would be replacing some, providing signage to so people know where the park systems are at, along
Got
with
it.
the trail systems,
Mhm.
and then also new entry monument type of signs
Got it.
for the community. I may have missed some. Carl.
Oh, yeah, but I don't have the list, so I wouldn't know. To be perfectly honest, we're discussing it again tomorrow in the items in the work session, so nothing has been settled here. It was staff that brought forward their thoughts, and then we're processing through those as far as, are those the projects we want to do? And, one of the things is this is not money it's unlike income, tax income or something that's going to repeat every year. So we don't want to start any new initiatives that would then ultimately be unfunded past that, right? So we're trying to be sure that whatever we spend this money on is we're either going to take care of the whole thing when we do it. I mean, some of this software, we're talking $10,000. It's not huge, but I think it will bring, great productivity to our staff. And so in that way, I think we're going to pay for it, pretty quickly. So we would, if we can, we're also looking at where else we might get funds for the same thing. So if we could, if there's grant funding or something like that, can we bring that in and do a project? Because the North Price that Carlos talked about, that's running into, because we may actually need to buy that property, the CDB property, to make it fit. So we're not talking necessarily an inexpensive operation there. So we'd love to get it in, but at the same time, so we would never be able to pay for the entire project just out of these funds. We'd have to get grants or something else that would pull it in. So that's basically the state of it. Nothing is totally settled. So.
Okay.
As far as, I guess it transitioned to me. So yeah, I can't think of anything that Carlos didn't mention other than a couple of items. One is, I noticed on the website that the Citizens Police Academy is coming up. And if you've never done that, I've done it and I found it very interesting. It's about 6 or 8 weeks in the evening, one evening a week. And a number of our police departments get together, including Olivet, and go through all kinds of things regarding the police, investigation techniques, their goals when they, stop people, I think there's also an advanced academy. I think ultimately in there, they take you out to the shooting range. So, so you don't have to go. I think I couldn't make it the night they went, but anyway, it was I found it to be very interesting and to see how our police departments work. The other thing is our assistant fire chief, Ron Johnson, is retiring. And there will be a retirement party for him. Let me see if I pulled it up and then I may have, it's March 5th from 5 to 9 at 5300 Gilman, which is the construction building near City Hall. Gilman Industrial Park, 5300 Gilman Industrial Park. So if you've been familiar with Ron over the many years he's been here, I just want to let you know that will be his retirement party. And Tim Fain has been promoted to the new assistant fire chief, who was lieutenant in our department. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry, another newbie question. What is happening? Maybe this is for us, maybe not for you. Sorry, Greg. What is happening with, or is anything happening with, land acquisition I can't remember the name of which street it is, but the one that's closest to the highway on the north side of Olive? Is somebody acquiring property there to put let's just assume a Quick Trip or something like that there?
Well, it's currently deeded to- So, yeah, it's probably.
That's something that this committee said, oh, yay. Or has any way to say no?
We would tend to look at the financial
Financial
impact, benefit, one way or another. And mainly, the main thing is that if a developer comes in and does not ask for any abatements
Got it,
or
right.
anything like that, it's very difficult
To stop.
for us to go ahead and say, no, you can't do it.
Right.
Now, that would be, we may get an ask from council to go ahead and say, give us your consideration on this project, and we would have a say. We could potentially look at the economic mix of all of that and make some case that it is or is not needed, perhaps, but that would be more difficult to do.
Should we only
And
have one gas station also?
more,
So-
I think more so, we would probably leave it to planning zoning. It would be
Okay.
more along their lines.
Got it,
But we may or may not have a say.
got it.
Let me add the following. In that particular instance, the city has a say because we own property there. And we don't have to sell it.
Mr. Moons, you've been quiet and you're online, and I don't want to neglect you at all. See if you have any comments on some of the things.
No, I mean, I think you answered the question. You know, if it goes to market and it's not funded or supported by the city, this commission typically doesn't have much say unless we're being asked to. And, you know, yeah, you answered the exact way I would have answered it, Rod. So I have nothing else to add to that.
I'm still feeling my way as to what is and is not in the purview of this committee, so.
Well, you're doing a great job because it took me like 2 years and you're like crushing it after a meeting and a half.
Thanks for
So
that vote of
you should
confidence. I
feel
appreciate
very happy with how you're doing so far. Trust me.
But we talk about just about everything that goes on, because there is just about everything that goes on in the committee, even with the parks. There are some economic issues that
Sure.
that go on with things that aren't necessarily revenue generating.
it. Got it. Okay, that was my only question.
Ooh, and speaking of, in that general area, there was another assemblage going on the east side of Hilltop, so on Chevy's side, from Chevy's towards Alice, but not all the way to Alice. There's a developer that went before the commission that's looking to assemble the properties that were left, that were outside of the Opus project, and create some attached housing there. So
Carlos, is there anything happening on North Price that is public knowledge?
well, we also have there is a warehouse, address is 1220 North Price. It's located north of the Public Works building across the street from Auto Beauty. It used to be, I've heard it started off as a Southern Comfort, then it was Buffalo Tools. It's a pretty large warehouse in there, one of the largest ones I have in the park. And I believe it is under contract by Proper Cannabis, who's looking to buy it. They've received a license to cultivate and an additional cultivation and manufacturing license.
Oh,
And they're looking at that site. It's zone industrial, and based on under the industrial district, both of those are permitted by right.
Oh.
However, I'm somewhat new to the cultivation aspect of it, but
it's a
they're
greenhouse.
correct.
That's all
But
it is.
it's a greenhouse that produces a pretty
It's a
stagnant
lot of
odor.
money for the city.
It's what?
I said it's a lot of money for the state.
It's a huge amount of money.
It's
for
like,
us.
that's a great thing.
Here's the thing.
You've all gone to mute. We can't hear you at this point.
I can't hear him either. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I cannot hear that.
Right. Mm. Well, I don't know what happened.
I could see myself in their screen and I was not moving, which makes me believe that the Zoom froze
Yeah.
on their end.
Well, Carlos is still on, but he took City Hall off, so maybe he's realized it.
Hmm.
Or either that or Hall just fell off. I don't know. There we go.
Yeah. Hello?
You're still showing mute on the Sid.
Okay, we're on,
Drago.
for some reason, it just went out. Can you see us and hear us?
Yep,
Yes.
we can see and hear you now. Yep.
All right, sorry about something just popped up on there.
And that would be cultivation and production only, no
Correct.
retail.
Correct.
We were talking about weed and then
Chris-
everything broke up.
What's that?
What?
No.
He said we're talking about weed and then everything broke up.
Right. All I said, David, was that friends who are in a variety of different businesses, and because they had a business relationship with a marijuana-based business, the banking situation for the companies that I'm aware of that were doing business with a marijuana-based business, they had like ridiculous banking fees they had to cover just because of the the banking regulations. That's what it had to do with. So as we're considering it and taking money in and all of those economic impacts to the city, we have to keep that in mind.
That's a good point.
On that note, sorry, I'm not gonna sit and pretend to be an expert, one, I'm not. But secondly, I just kind of back to the whole, I don't want to, I guess, pinpoint anybody's names too much, but Crestwood looked really, really hard into that, to the point that they were recruiting companies that were looking at cultivation to do greenhouses because it was such a revenue system, not from
Right.
the sales, but
Right.
obviously from the production,
Right,
to replenish everything that was lost from sales tax.
right.
And I know when that board looked at it, the economic impact overrode any penalties and fees that they were going to pay.
That's great to know.
I can't speak specifics. I
Right,
don't remember. I know some of there's paperwork about it, and that's a different city, and this is that,
Right,
I just remember that would have been probably about 4 years ago when kind of everything exploded.
when it was all
3.5 years
really
ago.
new and,
And from with what I do for a living as well, everybody would, call up, that was what they were wanting to do, is either cultivate or sell, before they were even on the list of being approved from the state. And you
Right.
had to weed through all of that process from the liability standpoint of, as a landlord representing landlords, could we even viably have that risk? And ultimately, from the production standpoint, I guess is what I'm trying to land at, is that risk was better than necessarily even from sales.
got
I
it.
mean,
It was a
good-
lesser
It's
risk.
a lesser risk to take on. The financial component was greater of what the monies that we could gather as a city
Got it.
from the production of it, that it was worth.
And what did you say about odor?
For us, and they've been a great group to be working with, is that they brought to our attention that part of the cultivation that it emits a pretty strong odor
From the fertilizer or
Certain
from the green itself?
from the green itself at certain times.
Got it. That makes sense.
And other communities. And if you look it up on the web, there's all sorts of communities that have tried to tackle and deal with them. So in an effort to work with us, and again, this is a permitted use by right that could have just gone in. We made a decision to process their occupancy through a special permit or conditional use. So the purposes of identifying steps and procedures of how they will mitigate the odor, And then two, how we would log in any concerns, complaints, and what steps we would take, you know,
To
to work
address them.
to address those. So that there is a system in place that they would be cooperative with us to work with and to manage. And Rock Hill is a good example of a place that's been working with the proper cannabis, establishing some
Well,
policies in place. So
I know that at least one of the main owners of that company has a background in commercial real estate. So
Mhm.
that's probably a good thing as far as, we're concerned. So,
um,
well,
and-
that'd be pretty
and
cool.
it's-
That's a great, of all the companies that I'm aware of, don't misread that, but of all the companies that I am aware of, they are an incredibly well-run company. I know a lot
We've
of
been very
the
impressed.
major players in that company.
And we're happy. This is an old building. It's an old
Yeah.
tired building that has potential, right now, when, for us, sometimes it's like how many people per square feet. And that's been the storage for the past couple of years.
So it really doesn't add a whole lot of people.
They will compared to what it is now.
Right.
But then
but
what it will
Right, but-
generate,
it'll generate revenue, and for the square footage that it will take up, it won't have the
Correct.
employee density that a
Correct.
building of that size could have. That's what I meant.
it goes back to the highest and best use, goes back to
Right.
that 5-year plan,
Right,
which is
right.
tied
Got
to the
it.
comprehensive plan.
It's like 150,000 square foot building and on 3 levels with, so
That's a
it's just
whole lot of greenhouse, let's just say.
very outmoded.
Right.
And, some of that space is used up with ramping, it is temperature control, which has been a big selling point for the building for a very long time. I was aware of it whenever I worked for the county.
Mhm.
And years ago, always been on the market, and how could they not, how could anyone not want that? But because of all the hurdles that it had with the space and just not high enough ceilings, it's to this, it's to that, and oh my God, 3 floors, no way.
Right. Right.
So what, you gotta rent, that just takes up square footage,
Right,
so.
got it. Well, that would be awesome.
We'll see what happens. Anything else, Mr. Carl?
I don't have anything. Again, unless there's questions.
The only thing is, I understand that, have you hired a new inspector, building inspector?
Yes, we have a new inspector starting on Monday, taking
Congratulations.
the entry-level inspector position. So it'll be probably a while before he's out on the field on his own. His name is Orlando Mack.
Orlando Mac.
Mack,
MACK.
M-A-C-K.
See, I don't think I even knew that. So Carlos is always in the know and I'm not. So
Guys, till a couple weeks. But yeah, he would be doing some of those occupancy inspections would be part of his, but right now we'll probably have Paul kind of doing most of those.
Can't really think of anything else. Mr. Moons, do you have anything that you would like to bring up?
Nothing to add for me. Thank you for the opportunity.
Talbot?
I think I've
Ms.
Probably talked about
Jacobs?
I think I've spoken enough.
With that, we're just about done here.
Adjourn 8:19.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
All right. All right. Thanks. See you, everybody. Have a good night.
yeah, thanks, everybody.